19. We're live at the Breitbart Embassy in the War Room, right in back of the Supreme Court on Capitol Hill. Want to apologize. Maybe having a little feedback into the radio, but we're going to take care of that here momentarily. There we go, right there. Not too shabby. War Room Impeachment, 7th of November, year of our Lord 2019. We're live, episode 19 in the War Room. Got Raheem Kassam from the Brexit movement, which is inextricably linked to the 2016 victory, and Jason Miller, the chief communication strategist for the 2016 campaign. Donald Trump, greatest comeback in American political history, and the transition communications director. We are honored today to have Dave Urban. And if you don't know Dave Urban, it's not just he's a 1986 graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point, served his country with the 101st Airborne as an artillery officer in the First Gulf War, and was a recipient awarded the Bronze Star for his conduct during that war in 1992. But he's known to us principally as the individual that led the Trump effort in Pennsylvania 2016, which was the key cornerstone of the victory, and really a guy who came in, and I remember this, and when I stepped in the last 8 days, came in, and when the poll showed 6, 8, 10 points down, would sit and bang on the table and say, "Hey, we can win this, and this will be breaking. We will pierce the blue wall." Dave is also on CNN. You see him with now that Steve Cortez and Jason Miller are no longer at the front line. It is Dave Urban and Rick Santorum, and they're now new human sacrifice Sean Duffy that's on there every night. Dave,
he's getting better. Sean's getting better.
You're getting better. Thank you. So you're coaching him up. I can tell. Coach him up already.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, first I want to talk about 16.
Sure.
I want to talk 16, 18, and then last night. Talk about Pennsylvania, how central it is to the Trump revolution, the key, what you saw that nobody else saw in 16, what happened in 18, what happened the other night.
Yeah, Steve, so thanks for having me, Jason. Thanks, guys, for having me here. So in 2016, look, it was pretty clear. I was, I had originally kind of thrown in the primary for Rick Santorum. I helped Rick Santorum in 2012, and, he almost came very close to taking out Mitt Romney. We fell short. Yeah. Was helping Rick in 2016.
And was a Trump-like candidate.
And
first time worked with Republican orthodoxy.
And very much so. If you read Rick's book, Blue Collar Conservative, is basically the blueprint for the Trump victory. So Rick falls out of the race, and I scan across the horizon, and I'm listening to Trump, watching Trump, and I'm saying, this guy's going to win. And everybody in this town, everybody in Washington, D.C., in the Beltway said to me, you're crazy. And I said, I'm throwing in with Trump. I'm going with Trump. And people would tell my business partners, tell me, you've got a great career. You're ruining your life. What are you doing? You're throwing it away on this guy. I said, guys, you don't get it. He's going to win. Western Pennsylvania, across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, people love this guy. And they were missing it big time. And, reporters would call, the Los Angeles Times, big papers, and say, I want to. What are you seeing? I want to come for an afternoon. I said, no, come for a day, a week. You'll see it then. And as I drove around the state, I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania, outside small mill town, outside of Pittsburgh, and then I went to school in Philly, and then I worked for a Pennsylvania senator for a long time and helped run some of his races. And so I kind of knew the state with some granularity, and I could tell that this message was resonating amongst a great deal of people that had otherwise been forgotten. The people in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Johnstown, and Altoona, places that both parties had kind of forgotten. They'd turned their backs on. They were the folks that America built. They built America. The people in Ambridge, Pennsylvania, built the Gateway Arch and the Brooklyn Bridge. They made the steel. They helped win the wars. And the parties kind of just walked away from them. And Donald Trump shows up and speaks directly to him. And yard signs everywhere. My neighbor, the guy who lived across the street from my parents, Ken Gregory, I think must have had the first Trump yard sign. He might have had it up in 2015 before he had it up so early, and the people were just so for my neighbor.
I remember people laughed and mocked, said, "Oh, yard signs, the Clinton campaigns." But it's psychological warfare to the biggest degree. It was you guys had them everywhere in Pennsylvania. A lot of it people paid out of their own pocket because we weren't exactly the most organized.
No, Steve, I remember people.
We couldn't collude. We had collusion with the Russians. We couldn't collude with Dave Urban and the guys in Pennsylvania.
Or with the yard sign makers.
So people were saying, they would ask for yard signs. So when the president came to Ambridge, Pennsylvania, my place my family was born and raised, and everybody went to church, and I introduced the president to Mrs. Lonsky, Marianne Lonsky, my next door neighbor, 82 years old. She said to President, I've been a Democrat my entire life. I've never voted for a Republican. And not only am I voting for you, David's giving me yard signs and I'm putting up on the highways. I mean, 82-year-old woman out sticking yard signs in. That is how you know. And nobody saw it. Nobody. The polls were down.
Well, this is the other thing I
Right.
want to say. Every morning on Morning Joe, because Miller would have the first call with the candidate. Every morning on Morning Joe, even as we bought into Urban Strategy, we're like 6, 8, 10 points down, and they are literally mocking us. Why is he going to Pennsylvania? Why is he there's except for the one guy you had was Rendell.
Well, Ed Rendell. Listen, Ed Rendell called it, and I will say the president was very dialed in. He was very dialed in. He's very in touch. He is a granular. You ever seen like farmers who pick up the dirt and they taste it, right? Trump has that kind of sense.
Well, he's
right?
a field player, like in
Yeah,
golf.
exactly.
He's a field. He could feel those odd crowds you had coming in.
So we started out, and as we traveled, we'd go to places that they'd never seen a candidate. We're at the Johnstown War Memorial, right? And what the last big thing that Johnstown, it was the film Slapshot. The movie Slapshot was filmed there. The Slapshot Museum was our green room, right? I mean, that's
The
how
Hanson
long,
brothers.
right? That's how long ago, right? That was the last big event, and we showed up at Johnstown. The place went bananas. Miles of people lining the roads. Those are the people that the president spoke to that have been overlooked, and he still speaks to today.
Okay, so we win that with 42,000 votes, amazing victory. 18, you have two candidates. You have Scott Wagner, a Trump type figure, didn't run a perfect campaign, put $20 million of his own money, loses against an incumbent, but loses by 1.1 million votes. You have Barletta, the very first guy. You got Lou Barletta.
Lou Barletta's a great man.
Courageous guy. First elected official in the country to come out for us. The Republican Party, this is when the Republican Party was not embracing Donald Trump.
Listen, we had like 4 people at the Capitol Hill Club and the Trump Club right there. There's like 4 of them.
And Barletta
6
loses
maybe.
by 900,000 votes. What was the difference between 18 and 16?
Yeah, so here's the difference. Donald Trump. That's the difference, right? People vote. This guy, many voters, this past election on Tuesday, you could talk about, the president almost dragged Bevin across the finish line, right? Not enough there to get him across. He still wanted to see
The Philadelphia
still
suburbs. So let's talk about Philadelphia suburbs. Because you're going to head. If we're to win this in 20, you'll be the tip of the spear. We got to carry Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Philly's very difficult, right? Philadelphia is very difficult. The Philadelphia suburbs have been trending Democratic for years. It's not like this isn't something that Donald Trump created. There haven't been Republicans in the Northeast for decades, right? They've been kind of falling off. They used to be rhinos, and then people thought, well, maybe it's not bad to have a rhino or two if they're still voting for the majority leader, and then they all disappeared, right? And it's just a trend that's happening in suburbs in Northern Virginia. Look, I say is and this may be somewhat controversial, but there's less gun ownership in America. There's less people of faith. No one's going to church anymore.
Lower sports participation.
So there's less belief in the institutions that the Republican Party believes in, right? In terms of limited government, Second Amendment rights, pro-life. So it's harder.
How is impeachment? How did impeachment play into Tuesday night, and where? Because we're going to shift here to the trial. Where do you think this sets in? Particularly nationally. Look, you sit in a place, CNN, that every night on those shows, it's full out. I was with Anderson Cooper the other night. Yeah. Remember, I've had great interviews with Anderson Cooper. The other night was
it was a great show.
It was a full-on duke out, right? And I've had great interviews with him on China.
Yeah,
and
Anderson was fair to you. I thought it was a good interview. Yeah,
but how is this going to play in the impeachment thing? They're starting, as you see, and one of the things we got to break is that, hey, next week live, they're going Wednesday, and they're going with what they got. They're not
becomes a made-for-TV event.
Well, so here's what I say, and this is what I said on CNN. I say, show me something new. Show me something that makes me say we should get rid of the president. I've not heard it from anybody to date. I hear third, fourth-hand testimony. Listen, I have a great deal of respect for Ambassador Taylor, fellow West Point
a lot of
grad.
these guys are West Point grads.
Yeah,
a lot of these guys have dedicated their lives to the country. How do you think they should be handled?
Listen, I think they should be given the respect that they're due, right? I think attacking
Taylor served with the 101st in Vietnam, right?
Decorated war veteran. I have a great deal of respect for both those gentlemen. Listen, it's a difference of policy opinion. They disagree on policy. Listen, if you took a poll in Foggy Bottom or amongst career diplomats, what they think about the president getting out of the Iran deal, they'd be overwhelmingly opposed. What they think about the president walking away from Paris Accord, their heads would explode, right? So,
and Dave, what do you think about the chain of command issue? And so that's one of the things where we've all three of us here disagreed a little bit. For example, how to handle Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. I've said, you know what? He's decorated in combat. He has a Purple Heart. Don't touch that with a 10-foot pole. But you know what? When he's been on the battlefield, when he's been out there nobly serving our country, he would never undermine or intentionally subvert the chain of command. But he's doing exactly that in the White House.
Yeah, I mean, your point's a fair point. I feel differently. I think, again, I think that he thinks he's doing his duty, okay? And
it's not about doing his duty. This is different. We're not questioning his beliefs of doing his duty. In the chain of command, that he's a detailee.
Right. No.
So he's got a chain of command up through the NSC into the White House, but he's also got a chain of command both to the Defense Department, the Army, and Taylor, who's the 101st West Point guy, to Mike Pompeo, is another West Point guy. You know, Pompeo did bring in guys who knew about duty to the country. Where you look at this stuff, you don't see where it ever went up any chain of command, and all of a sudden it starts metastasizing of whistleblowers. Why are you going to whistleblower when you've got another chain of command? And how come these guys?
Yeah, that's your point. Your point is they should.
So what do you think of that?
Listen, there is a valid point to be made. I don't know if Vindman did Vindman go to his superior and say, I believe this is wrong. Did his superior then go to his superior?
We haven't seen the transcript yet.
So I don't know.
I think it's a line of questioning.
I just think, listen, again, I think both these guys are honorable people. I think Vindman's an honorable guy. He thinks, in his mind, he thinks he's doing the right thing. I would never attack the guy. I think Bill Taylor's obviously an honorable guy, served his country, bled for our country. Both these guys have bled for America. They think when they wake up at morning, they think they're doing the right thing. So, again, I take it as a policy difference. I think that, a lot of people think what the president does every day is a problemsome, right? I think that people want to get rid of the president every day because they think he's doing things wrong.
Well, to your point, Dave, about this being a policy difference, I mean, that's one of the things we've been talking about for a few weeks here is this entire impeachment push is fundamentally a policy difference between folks in the Foreign Service community, the bureaucrats at State Department and DOD and Pentagon, or even in the basement of the EEOB, who fundamentally disagree with President Trump's America First worldview. And in their minds, they're helping the country, they're doing the right thing. But I think for many of them, they also have the mindset of they've been here before President Trump, they're going to be here after President Trump, and gosh darn it, we know what's right.
Well, that's correct. And, I'd be interested to hear if these guys get cross-examined, what their views of Obama's policy towards Ukraine was.
That's a great point.
That's a hopeful yes.
I would like to hear on cross-examined.
What do you mean if they get cross-examined?
Well,
let's segue that. Okay, but here, you're listening to War Room Impeachment on the John Fredericks Radio Network. It's episode 19. I want to thank our producer for that. A little background sound check. Okay, let's pivot. People don't realize, Urban, that you actually have quite a bit of knowledge of the impeachment process. In fact, you were a chief of staff for a U.S. senator in the last impeachment of Bill Clinton.
Yeah, so it's. I will tell you that the circus that is the House, this whole process or lack of process or perceived process by the House, gets very, very serious. The moment they vote articles of impeachment, the Senate is labeled, fancies themselves the greatest deliberative body in the world, and at least back then, right? They actually took that title very seriously.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think things have changed a lot, right? I mean, we'll see how a decade plus.
It was more courtly. It was more. It was a little more. Robert Byrd was there.
It was a little more genteel, right? People believed that it was the upper body, truly, and they acted as such. Now I think it's just a more mature version of the House, right? Unfortunately, and so we will see. I think that senators took their duties as the saucer to quell the bubbling tea a little bit more seriously, perhaps. And we'll see. Like right now, from what I've read, Pat Leahy, who's kind of one of the gray beards of the Senate, went and has tried to reach across the aisle to Thune and some others and said, hey, let's try to figure out how we move forward, right? Because don't forget, the Senate. According to the Constitution, the Senate, is the jurors here. The founders, right? Originally, if you go back and read, I went back last night and read Federalist 65, right? And if you look at how they viewed impeachment and what the role of the Senate was, the framers of the Constitution, they had two initial plans. The first plan was that was going to be that the Supreme Court would hear the case, and so many of the framers thought that would be too small a pool. It's not big enough. Doesn't represent America enough. So the second plan was
Also, judicial supremacy.
well, yeah, judicial supremacy. And the second plan was to have the governors actually here. It would be all the governors for the states would be the jurors.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
Madison parachuted in at the last minute with kind of consensus and said, "How about if we have the Senate do it?" And that was actually the model in England, right? The House of Lords. And so a lot of these folks who were the drafters felt comfortable with that, and some of the states had that in their constitutions. So he was able to get that through, and then so that's been the kind of the basis for this. And so the senators.
But
yeah,
I want to I want to go back to one thing you said. But you said if there is a cross-examination in the House,
Right.
and that is that imply that something in the Senate's going to be different? You said if there's a cross-examination.
well, I don't know. We'll see how this is going to play out. These public hearings, right? If we're going to be able to, Jim Jordan, others are going to ask really, pointed questions, and if they do, can ask and raise some of these things, like where were you during the Obama administration when they were handing out blankets?
My
Well,
point is,
Dave-
when you did it, it's an evidentiary. What people don't think understand. This is what we're trying to
Right.
bring up: is that the trial is actually a trial. This thing
Oh,
that's
yeah,
going on in the
absolutely.
House is
Yeah.
you make up your own.
Right.
This is actually when you did it back in the
Yeah.
day, you had serious lawyers,
Right.
serious people, the evidentiary basis, and this came off of 7 or 8
Well,
special prosecutor that had taken years to draw the evidence.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. So so that's going to be the real question here is how does it look in the Senate, right? What does it look like? What are the rules? They have to come to agreement upon the rules and how this is going to go. What's the burden of proof for moving the president of the United States, right? The burden of proof, is it a mere preponderance of the evidence, like in a civil trial, like you bump somebody's car and you're found guilty by your jurors of well, maybe he did it. It's made more likely than not. Or is it a criminal standard of beyond reasonable doubt? There could be no doubt in anybody's mind. And I would say to remove a sitting president, to negate the electors' wishes, should be the absolute highest standard.
And
It should be-
Dave, everything next week starts going into TV mode. This is all a made-for-TV circus, obviously with the House hearings, and as you
Law and order.
exactly aptly described it, the House side is basically it's like recess, right? It's the kids, not playing well with each other in the sandbox. We're going to all sorts of hyperbole. But what I really want to hear from you is set the visuals and the stage for us when this
Yeah.
gets to the Senate. The solemn nature of this.
Well, yeah.
This goes from the food fight to
Oh, it's
this
very
is real deal
so-
law
so
and
right,
order. Like
so-
where's Sam
right.
Waterston? I mean, this is the real deal.
Yeah, and so don't forget the Constitution and the framers thinking of this, right? Say, hey, we're going to put some rules, right? The senators have to swear an oath when they begin this, right? So it's a very
They
solemn.
swear an oath?
Yeah, it's a very solemn undertaking, right? That they sit in their chairs. They're not allowed to speak. They're not allowed to get up. It is which is uncharacteristic for any politician, right? Let alone anybody in the Senate. So they have to sit there quietly, and in the presiding officer's chair sits the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. I mean, it is a very solemn occasion. I can tell you when I was there, and the Clinton impeachment was circus-like in its nature, and as soon as it came to the Senate, people got very focused, and they became. I would say somewhat more elevated their game. They played a much higher game in the Senate. They recognized that this was something that would impact the republic for all of history. There have only been two, as you know, everybody knows, two prior impeachments of presidents. Both, by the way, were acquitted. Interestingly, in the first in Johnson's impeachment, he was not removed because it was an election year. And it was found to be like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to
By one vote.
Yeah, but so the framers and others, I think, would say that impeachment is only for very, very, very egregious crimes, and the best way to remove a politician in this case would be through election. And you hear that from you hear focus groups. You hear it from even a lot of the members say, listen, we don't. This is 2020. There's an election coming up. Let the people decide. But you know what? I think they're afraid that if the people decide, they'll be deciding to send Donald Trump back to Washington for 4 more years, and that's the Democrats' greatest fear.
And jump in here a second, Jason. Is the thing? One of the reasons we started the show, we had done this. I'd done this show a couple of weeks ago, and it seemed like the Trump base was not actually grasping the gravity of what this is. Nancy Pelosi has got a process. And Trump base loves President Trump. It's fake news, everything like that. They love President Trump. They support the program. But sometimes you've got to just face the brutal reality of where we are in Washington, D.C. Could this, and this is one of the messages we're trying to get to people, this is as serious as it possibly can get.
Absolutely. Steve, you were, I watched either on Anderson or Michael Smerconish or maybe both, and you said Nancy Pelosi's putting on a master class. And you're exactly right. She's a masterful politician. She knows exactly what she's doing. Look, I don't agree with her,
Right,
but
exactly.
she is incredibly bright and a brilliant politician. And the way she's conducting this, I'm not necessarily downstream some of her the lieutenants and otherwise, but she sits at the top and rules that place. Even the president admires her. The president admires what an iron fist she rules.
So, Dave, very important, because we remember the House impeachment managers, Lindsey Graham and others, 20 years ago. We got to imagine that Adam Schiff will be one of the Democratic House managers when this comes over to the Senate. How important is it for President Trump that he picked the right on-TV people to be sitting there at that table? And do you have any speculation for if Dave Urban was in charge? I'm putting you on the spot. Dave Urban.
We're going to break some news here.
Yeah, Dave Urban is now general counsel for all things Trump. Who do you put on TV to argue that case in front of the Supreme Court and in the whole nation?
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know who the best lawyers are, right? But I'd find the best lawyers, right? Necessarily the most flamboyant TV personalities, right? You want the best lawyers. You want the people who are the sharpest legal minds.
People like Emmett Floods or
Yeah,
like Bill Burke.
Oh,
those types of
absolutely. Listen,
Washington heavyweights.
the White House, Pat Cipollone and Mike Purpura and the team the president has in the White House are very bright guys. Mike Purpura is a West Point graduate, friend of mine. I've known Pat Cipollone, worked on the Santorum campaign.
Great guy.
These guys, they're very bright, but you have to get equally as adept people to be standing in there in the well of the Senate, to be able to pivot, to be able to know what they're doing, to look competent, right?
I think Mark B. Casey, another name I'd put out there, son of the former attorney general, brilliant litigator, someone who's very sharp, used to be in front of cameras. He's another person I'd consider having on that list.
But Steve, your point is well taken. Like Nancy Pelosi, this is a masterclass. If the folks who are listening to this, right, you need to call your House of Representative members, get on the phone, dial the
Call to action.
Yeah, call to action. Call their offices and say, hey guys, when this is coming up, when the impeachment votes resolution's coming, you better stand with the president. Call your senators, Democrat or Republican. Call the operator, get their numbers, and say, hey guys, I want you to know I stand with the president. You need to flood the phone lines. You need to let them hear from you in America.
Okay, we're going to come back. Dave Urban, the head of the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania, led to the amazing victory. He's going to keep with us after the break. We're going to have some commercials, pay some bills here on the John Fredericks Radio Network. This is Stephen K. Bannon with Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam. You're listening to War Room Impeachment, Episode 19. We'll return after a short commercial break.
War Room Impeachment. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Impeachment, Episode 19. It is 7 November, year of our Lord 2019. Dave Urban joins us in the War Room live at the Breitbart Embassy in the first floor with Raheem Kassam from Brexit fame and Jason Miller from the 2016 campaign fame, two master political strategists and communications specialists who know how to run war rooms. I want to go back to Dave Urban. The call to action, very important. That's one of the things the show's about. Jason has a segment on the show when we have time, won't have it today, called Making Them Famous, right? These congressmen. Pennsylvania is central because we lost a couple of 3 seats up there. How do people get engaged? Everybody's calling saying, what do I do? How do I help? I want to help the president. The president's my guy. What do I do?
Yes, there are two races that I think are going to be really important. Democratic sitting members, Connor Lamb and Matt Cartwright, both in Pennsylvania, both in tough districts. You want to help. Actually, you can help wherever you are in America. 202, there's the number. Get a pen. 202-225-3121. That's a capital operator. The capital operator will connect you with your congressman. You tell them, hey, I live in X city or X state, and this is my, I want to talk to my congressman. They'll connect you and let them know. Let them hear from you how important it is they vote with the president in the House. And then when it gets to the Senate, call your senators, Democrats, Republicans, call them and tell them the same thing. We need you to stand with the president.
Before we pivot to some other action, I want to go back right to the Senate for the last thing about how did the rules get set? We know the big fight on the rules here in the House. Well, we got overwhelmed. We control the Senate. How does that work?
Yeah, so Steve, in the Senate, right? So the Senate rules are developed by the Senate. So you'll have Senator McConnell and Senator Schumer will have to get together and they'll have to vote the rules. In the last impeachment, there was so much comedy, ITY comedy, that there were passed 100-0, and the rules were agreed to. In this instance, I'm not quite sure there's going to be that kind of agreement and comedy. I don't think there'll be people that are willing to get together and work together like that. And I don't think so. I don't think you're going to see that. I think it's going to be much more acrimony.
I tell you, we have right now, real quickly, we have Congressman Morgan Griffith on the line from Virginia. Congressman Griffith, thank you very much for joining us here on War Room Impeachment.
Glad to be with you.
Hey,
Hope
so
you're well.
you've got some comments and some analysis for what happened in Virginia on Tuesday, and also where do you think we sit? Where do you think we sit on this?
Well, in Virginia, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board, but I think there are a number of things that we didn't do. We didn't get a message out that appealed to suburban women. There are messages out there. Suburban women don't want their teachers going on strike, but many of the Democrats running are in favor of getting rid of all of the right-to-work laws in Virginia, including public employees being able to strike. We've had that legislation, even when I was in the legislature 9-10 years ago. Some of the Democrats were introducing things like that. It didn't get out of committee. Now it's likely to get out of committee. So we should have focused on that instead of talking about big businesses that most people in the suburbs, men and women, don't really identify with. We should have been talking about how this would lead to public employees going on strike like in Chicago. That would have helped.
Congressman Griffith, what about in this impeachment fiasco we've got? What about changing out the Intel Committee? Would you support that leadership actually being more aggressive here and getting people like Lee Zeldin, getting people like Mark Meadows, getting people like Jim Jordan? Not that we don't have great guys on intelligence. Hey, I spent like 30 hours down there being grilled by these guys, right, in House Intelligence, and Devin Nunes and those people are fantastic. But do we need, according to Matt Gaetz, to bring in the killers?
Well, I don't think that would hurt, but I do think that Nunes has done a nice job. But you do need folks down there. Although, our people are stepping up to the plate, folks you might not have expected to step up to the plate. So, I'm trying to wade through the depositions that they've handed out thus far. Would have been nice to have seen it live on C-SPAN so I could judge exactly how aggressive our people are being. But I do think that we have a pretty good team there. But if we could add to it, that'd be great. Democrats aren't going to allow it.
What about next Wednesday? Next Wednesday, this thing starts live. Are you prepared? Is the Republican leadership prepared? Are we ready to throw down and take a fight? Because it seems like Pelosi and Schiff in this crowd, they've got a plan and they are just running. They're just blowing through this thing. What are you guys doing? And how are you getting prepared?
Well, part of what I'm doing is reading all these transcripts. I'm buying a software program that reads it to me as I'm riding down the road because of the large district I'm in the car a lot. And even though it's not perfect, at least I'm hearing the words, and some of it is outrageous. And we need to be ready to point out those parts because all they've been doing is they've been cherry picking. And if there's one small cherry on the tree that looks like it might be half ripe, they're leaking it to the press. What we need to do is take all those other rotten fruits that show that there's bias, that show that there's nothing there, and be giving that to the press. And yes, we need to be very aggressive with that.
You're down at your district this week. What are folks down there, the common citizens, working class people, middle class people? What are they saying about what's going on in Washington right now? What's the feedback that you're getting every day?
Well, look, the feedback is, particularly among the Republican base, but in the public at large, is that they support the president. They want the president's actions. Some of them don't like the way he says it. Some of them do. And then there's this group of people who are like, look, I'm not even sure I want to vote for the president, but why won't the Democrats just let him do his job? And that's a big concern. And look, in Washington County, which I represent, we elected a guy to the Commissioner of Revenue's job who ran for Commissioner of Revenue as a Trump Republican. That was his slogan. And he won election on Tuesday night.
Big time.
Nobody gave him a chance, but the people support Trump. And on every sign, he said, Dr. Mark Matney, a Trump Republican. And he won election. So the people down here are supporting the president. Now, Northern Virginia is a different animal.
Congressman Griffith, I know that being a Virginian. Congressman Griffith, how can people get more access to your thinking? How do you have a Twitter handle? Do you have a website? How can people find out more about you?
Well, we do have our official website and our political website are out there, and I don't run the Twitter handle. I sometimes make suggestions. They found I got too obsessed with it, and they took it.
You're very Trumpian, very Trumpian.
Yeah, I got all obsessed with it, so they said, "All right, we're taking that away." So I make suggestions, but yeah, we're out there doing things, and they can. Check on our official site and get our official page, or go to our political page.
We're going to link to
Congress.
We're going to link to you today, Congressman Morgan Griffith from the Southwest Virginia, the Roanoke, St. Lawrence. Sir, thank you very much for joining us here on War Room Impeachment.
Very good. Glad to be with you. Thank you.
Do you see the fight there? Do you think that Meadows, Zeldin? I'm gonna throw this back on Dave Urban. By the way, Dave Urban. Every time there's talk of some palace intrigue and the thing, the change of thing, Dave Urban's on the short list to be chief of staff. Right? I'm just throwing that out there. Zeldin. This is going to get controversial. You saw Congressman Griffith, a good man, but they got colleagues. Devin Nunes. These guys are solid guys. Is Matt Gaetz right? Do you need the killers? Do you need Zeldin? Do you need Meadows? Do you need Jordan? Guys are sophisticated in media and know how to make news on CNN. Not just. I love Fox, but not just Fox. Guys and go on CNN, MSNBC, and take it to Rachel Maddow, take it to Brian Williams and these guys.
Well, listen, Steve, you're exactly right. This is, as you know, played out in the media in 30-second sound bites. Right? If you can't adequately present your case in the time it takes to get from the first to the third floor in an elevator, you're not going to make the news. They're going to parse it. It's not going to be done correctly. So you need killers.
You're saying to pierce the wall of noise.
It is right now. Here's what people hear. Right? That's what people hear.
That wasn't producer Dan. That was Dave Urban intentionally doing that.
That's what they hear. They just hear white noise.
And this is why we got to get. That's why Matt Gaetz' situation, because I think he's a brilliant strategist. That's not a firebrand. His going down to the skiff, because the insiders knew it, but nobody in America knew it. He broke the fever, and that had Nancy Pelosi call her first audible.
Yeah, and so the other thing too is I think listen, let's see if this is the best that the Democrats have, what they've produced thus far. I don't see how that moves the needle. Show me something, give me some testimony thus far that gives a senator say, yeah, I'm going to overturn the will of the people. I'm going to kick this guy
I'm putting
out.
you on the spot. Is Dave Urban, the head of the Pennsylvania, we got to win that to win 2020? Is Dave Urban telling Leader McCarthy that Zeldin, Meadows, and Jim Jordan, and maybe Gaetz, others have got to go on Intel now to be part of this?
Listen, I think you want as many guys with pipes, right? You want the guys who are listen,
pipe hitters.
Listen, you just said, and I agree. Nancy Pelosi is doing she's masterful. She's a masterful politician. Kevin McCarthy, I love the guy. He's a great politician as well. We've got to kind of move here a little bit. I think we got to pivot. This is a different animal right now. Different animal. President's in grave danger. Listen, the House is moving to impeach only the third president in the history of the United States in our republic.
That's why I don't think, and he says, that's why I still don't think our movement understands the urgency of this situation. They're moving down a path sometime before Christmas to bring at least 2 articles of impeachment.
Yep.
Abuse of power and obstruction of justice. They've got the votes. They've got the votes. Even if we do a great job here in the 31, they've got the votes to be able to do this. And they've bet the whole Democratic Party. And one of the reasons, as Miller keeps bringing up, is that the lineup out in Iowa is so unimpressive. Right, they're just, and you see by the polling the other day, they thought they're going to have these massive leads. It's a horse race.
Well, look, in 2018, they ran successfully on healthcare. Right, they ran on some issues that really resonated with Americans. You listen to all the exit polls, the polling. You take the verbatims. People say this is what moved the needle. Unbelievably, they're not doing that now because I think their healthcare is free healthcare. That's why the plan that the Democrats are trying to sell isn't really a plan that consumers, the American voter, wants to hear. So they can't run on healthcare because what their candidates are trying to sell is stuff that people don't want to buy. So Jason's exactly correct.
And Steve, I want to make sure that with our time remaining, we give due justice to the developments yesterday with the pearl clutching and hand wringing over Don Jr. Saying the whistleblower's name, and also some of the interesting things that we found out about his attorney Mark Zaid out there. Raheem, do you want to talk about the?
We're going to make Mark Zaid famous. So in the Making Them Famous segment today, it's the attorney for the whistleblower, right?
And let's keep it family friendly. It's a little creepy.
Well, that's how he likes it, apparently, but without the family. We have to get into this, and it's not pleasant. That over the course of the last 24 hours, it appears that Mark Zaid, the whistleblower's lawyer, some very strange things have come out about his YouTube channel and what he's looking at and what he's been tweeting over the past couple of years. We'll start with the YouTube. His liked videos, this is his official YouTube channel where he uploads all of his clips from television or whatever, but his liked videos include these 3. Top 10 prettiest Disney Channel stars, top 10 Disney girls, and Selena Gomez from Child to Woman. That would be weird enough in and of itself, but
let's just stick to the facts. No commentary. Just keep
no comment. I'm just moving to his Twitter account now.
I don't want to be shut down in our first.
I'm moving to his
weeks.
Twitter account now.
Now hold on, but stop me for hang on for a second. You're saying in YouTube He's a grown man, right?
Well, I would assume he's a lawyer. He's a grown man.
And he's got what now on his YouTube? What's this?
He's liked 3 videos: top 10 prettiest Disney Channel stars, top 10 Disney girls, and Selena Gomez from Child to Woman. He then has tweeted
I guess that speaks for itself.
A lot.
We'll just put it out there, okay?
a lot about Disney in the last couple of years. He has tweeted about how much he loves Disney, how much he goes to Disney by himself and poses with all the princesses and Donald Ducks and all that kind of stuff. And if you go through his Twitter, there are an extraordinary number of Disney
Well, you'll have that on the
references.
site later. I already see the guys at Daily Beast and Huffington Post already writing the story. Wow, that's kind of unusual, right?
Pretty weird.
Okay.
Pretty strange.
Okay. What about? Let's talk about the whistleblower in the tweet. The story was up by Aaron Klein up on Breitbart, I believe it was. Tweeted by Don Jr.
Yeah, so yesterday Don Jr. tweeted out the whistleblower's name, which, by the way, the whistleblower's name has been out there everywhere. I mean, this has been on countless websites. Rush Limbaugh has said the whistleblower's name over and over, and it literally drove TV coverage all yesterday afternoon. And Don Jr., how could you mention the whistleblower's name? Now the whistleblower, I had reporters call me saying, isn't the whistleblower now in danger or in fear? It's just a complete red herring to go and distract things away from what's going on. But, as we had David Rivkin on here last weekend, made it very clear, the Federal Whistleblower Act, that's to make sure that a whistleblower who reports fraud.
Have you looked at this, Urban? Do you believe it falls on? I mean, Rivkin is a serious guy, right? It's his op-ed in the Wall Street Journal kind of changed the direction. He and Gates changed the direction of this thing. He says this guy does not fall under the whistleblower protection, correct? Is that because of what
he says is that the whistleblower protection does not grant you anonymity. What it does is a whistleblower act makes sure that if you report something on, say, fraud or waste, that you can't then get fired because of bringing that forward. It doesn't say anything about being able to stay anonymous, especially when you're trying to take down a sitting president.
My only comment on this is if the media was really concerned about the whistleblower's anonymity, the New York Times wouldn't have published that he was a lawyer at the CIA. I mean, it's like the trail of breadcrumbs is pretty easy to follow from that. It's a lawyer at the CIA who worked in the National Security Council during the Obama-Biden tenure is not a tough one to trace, and so the false outrage is somewhat.
We'll get back to the whistleblower more tomorrow. Let's go back. We get some more stuff. David Hale's testimony yesterday. That was a surprise. Do you know Hale?
I do not.
David Hale's a guy, Obamacare guy, right? Of David Hale, and then the surprise witness today, Raheem. I'm kind of shocked. I don't really understand the vice president. It's his foreign policy advisor. What's going on here?
Yeah, I kind of understand. Jennifer Williams, former field rep for Bush Cheney in 2004, for volunteers, somebody who's spent a good long period of time now in the State Department, a significant period of time, trained up in the usual manner through Princeton and the Georgetown Public Policy. Foreign Service officer now at the U.S. State Department, specializing in the Vice President's team on Eurasia, but has, again, what we've noted here over the last couple of weeks, this track record of the established foreign policy mindset and mantra and positions. I'll give you an example. She was at the Lebanon office back in 2009. She was in the refugee program in 2000.
David Hale, I think.
And to the refugee program in 2011, refugee program 2014. She's been the press officer at the U.S. Embassy in London, and now, as you say, on the vice president's
Why
team.
would she volunteer? This is because she's had to. I mean, this is one that you've got to basically say, I'm volunteering to come forward, because everything else is included under the Kupperman.
Well, I think this is very clear. I mean, this is a career person who's doing this. I mean, when we look at the vice president's team, who does the vice president really count as his team? You have Chief of Staff Mark Short, who we all know and like, and we've worked with him. But his main foreign policy and national security person is General Kellogg.
Right,
best, and
the
that
best,
is the
best.
It's General
He's a good
Kellogg.
man.
Now, there
Good
might
man.
be career folks.
82nd Airborne.
Right. There might be career folks who are under him, who report to him. But can I imagine the vice president ever waking up on a day and, I got to call this person to get pro-tipped on what's going on in the world? No. If he wants an update, he's going to call General Kellogg.
You've seen Pelosi talk about her masterclass. Next Wednesday she starts. She's going with what they got, right? They're not going to have Bolton. That's all going to get argued at the Supreme Court. She's got 8 people, all ambassadors, a couple of DOD. She's going with what she has.
Yeah, Steve, I think you're exactly correct. I think she looks, like you said, she looks at Taylor, at Vindeman, these folks who cut a nice cloth. I mean, look, Colonel Vinneman shows up in his uniform. He makes a good witness.
Pretty impressive.
Impressive guy, right? Bill Taylor, impressive record. Again, Nancy Pelosi, masterclass. She's not pulling people who have sketchy backgrounds, who are questionable. I mean, these people are
and she's
very
keeping
reputable.
it tight. She's keeping it tight. It's going to be on these 2 charges. She's keeping it tight. Everybody else, it could be essential. Pompeo, Bolton, Kupperman, Mulvaney, the guys in OMB, Vogt, Blair, all the other real stuff, if they want to get down to it and really get it, they're just throwing it off to the side and they're going for it almost like, I'm not saying political circus, but this is political theater.
Yeah, and she's very wise about the people they're bringing up. I think that they feel that these people they have a coherent narrative. They're very believable.
And Sonderman's walk back. Let's talk about that. His walk back takes the last chink out of that narrative. Jump in here.
But unfortunately, Sonderman is there's still, as I always point out, there's still no, you never hear Sonderman saying, the president told me to do anything but tell the truth.
You don't see anybody telling that.
Yeah,
and third-hand stuff.
And the president told me to tell the truth when I was testifying. The president told me there was no quid pro quo. I mean, the things that Sondland. I'm sorry. Sondland. I'm conflating.
It's a bunch of crazy names.
I'm conflating Vindeman and Sondland.
Right.
So
That's a chimera.
They're kind of the ones.
So
right?
Sondland, his testimony is firsthand from the president has been exculpatory.
Exactly.
Tell the truth, and there is no quid pro quo. I want you to know that. I mean,
and it's about corruption.
Yeah. I mean,
but hey, even when you look back at Taylor's testimony from yesterday and look at the transcript from yesterday, he basically says, look, all of this information I've been telling you came from, a third party or third hand source. He says, I believed what Sondland told me at the time. He said, I had no problem with Giuliani at the beginning. It's all over the place.
We're setting up part of the thing, and Jason's a master of this on the campaign. We're setting up in the war room, not just polling, things like that, but also surrogate program and booking. What would you tell, as a guy that does it every day on CNN, and Jason used to be there, going into the lion's den in the toughest cauldron, right, of guys that are not on your side? What do you say that what does the surrogate program have to do now to put the case forward to the American people, Democrats and Republicans, common sense American people, the case for the president?
Listen, I think several things. One, the underlying issue, the president says read the transcript. I agree, read the transcript. Tim Morrison and others say, listen, I don't agree with the policy, but he did nothing illegal.
You're saying the granularity and substance. When the president says substance.
I say get granular. Get granular. What the president did on the transcript is not, number one, it's not illegal. And number two, it's not something you'd remove a sitting president for.
And Dave, there's one other thing, too, that you're very, very good at this, and you touched on it earlier, but to put a finer point on it, putting questions back on your opponents as well as the host. Because when you go in, say it's when you go on with Chris Cuomo, and it's Cuomo, you, and then a Democrat. And so basically right off the top, it's 2-on-1, just right out the gate. But when you go and put questions to them, that's when you get the kind of the shocked moment. Like when Steve put the question to Anderson about going into Hunter Biden and China. That caught Anderson kind of a deer in the headlights type moment. These are kind of part of the things, but we have to go into all these interviews prepped, ready to go. And frequently, look, Dave, I know you've been in the spot, I've been on it as well, where you have the host, a legal expert who really basically hates Trump, and then you. And so they're given the air of authenticity or the cachet of being a lawyer, and we have to come with street smarts and be street fighters.
Listen, and it's not for the faint of heart. I appreciate the opportunity to get on and fight the fight, right? I appreciate being given the airtime and the footing. I'll take my chances and my chops when I get them, but I'm going to take the fight to him every time. I keep asking the question: show me something that is going to cause a senator to vote to remove this president.
You see, this is the thing on CNN. When you say granular, I mean detail-oriented. When you're back on CNN, you're hitting these guys back with facts and details, and that's where they're kind of all in this political warfare about emotion. You come on, and what I like about you on CNN is you're pounding them back with give me the facts. Here are the facts as I see them. And then granular and facts and substance are all what's going to get the president through this.
Yeah, and there's an old saying that feelings aren't facts, right? You can feel a certain way, but the facts are what they are. And to what was said earlier, what Mr. Taylor said yesterday is, what I know for sure is Mr. Morrison told me that he heard Ambassador Sondland tell Mr. Yermak.
Yeah.
I mean, that is how convoluted.
That's water cooler.
Listen, that's where Ambassador Taylor said he had a clear understanding, right, of withholding of military aid. That's his clear
Can
understanding.
you hit us with
Spain-
that again, just so people can
Yeah,
hear
so
that?
it said Ambassador Taylor, what he described was like a game of telephone, right? I heard. He said, what I know for sure is what Mr. Morrison told me, that he must have heard Ambassador Sondland tell Mr. Yermak.
Okay, we've got about that's going to end the show. We were so honored to have Dave Urban in here, head of the 2016 in Pennsylvania, which was the key to victory. We're going to have him back here in the War Room. Raheem Kassam, Jason Miller. Go to our website. It's now a fully functioning news site. Everything impeachment. War Room Impeachment. 7 November, the year of our Lord 2019, episode 19. We will see